Remember when you were a kid, sitting down with a brand new box of crayons, and you draw these wild purple bears, bright yellow parrots, or even hot pink grasshoppers? You probably thought you were just using your imagination, right? Well, it turns out nature is far more creative and incredibly colorful than we give it credit for. Welcome to this explainer, where we are going to explore some of the absolute rarest mutations on the planet, diving into how these amazing creatures completely hit the jackpot in the genetic lottery.
So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to kick things off with the genetic color palette, move into nature's ghostly white anomalies, then we'll check out some truly bizarre biological mashups, and finally, we'll wrap up by discussing human impact and conservation. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the genetic color palette, focusing on the addition and swapping of pigments.
Now, most of us are familiar with albinism, but have you ever heard of melanism? It's essentially the exact opposite. This genetic mutation triggers an absolute overproduction of melanin in the skin and fur, creating these stunning, dark variations of animals we usually expect to be lighter. Take the king cheetah, for example. Thanks to a specific recessive gene, instead of its regular spots, it ends up with this gorgeous cream-colored coat covered in large blotchy spots and these thick, distinctive dark stripes running right down its back. It completely transforms the animal's entire vibe.
And melanism actually exists on a spectrum. A great example of a partial mutation is the cross fox. They actually make up about 30% of the Canadian fox population, getting their name from a dark stripe running down their back that intersects with another one across their shoulders. But then, on the extreme end, selective breeding gave us the fully melanistic silver fox. This creature is incredibly rare and elusive, boasting a glossy black undercoat and a top coat that literally looks like it's been dusted with pure silver.
Okay, this next one is just fascinating. For a long time, people thought these bright pink bugs were just changing colors to match the autumn leaves. But back in 1907, an entomologist found bright pink katydid nymphs right in the middle of summer in Wisconsin. This completely debunked the seasonal theory and proved a condition first described in 1874 called erythrism. It's a recessive genetic mutation where normal green pigment is absent, replaced by an excessive production of red or pink.
But, as you might guess, sticking out like a neon sign in the vibrant green Amazon rainforest makes life pretty rough for a hot pink katydid. Being hot pink in a green world is basically ringing the dinner bell for predators. It's a huge reason why you almost never see these fabulous little insects surviving in the wild.
Moving from neon pink to solid gold, we have xanthochrysm. This is a mutation that stops the production of red pigment entirely and replaces it with an excessive, dazzling yellow pigmentation, giving us variants known as lutinos, which are highly sought after in the bird world.
Just think about the Latino golden macaw. By deliberately breeding for this specific yellow overproduction, these birds completely lose their typical black and blue features. Their beak, claws, and facial features turn stark white instead of black. Their eyes become a pinkish gray, and believe it or not, even their tongue is white. These pale golden birds are phenomenally rare, specifically maintained by avian enthusiasts who want to keep the spectacular strain alive.
Let's transition into Section 2, Nature's Ghostly White Anomalies, where we explore what happens when nature takes pigment away entirely.
It's super important to understand the biological difference between albinism and leucism here. Albinism strips away all melanin. This not only ruins an animal's camouflage, making something like an albino snake a sitting duck for predators, but it also usually destroys their eyesight, making hunting nearly impossible. Leucism, on the other hand, means the animal can produce pigment, it just can't deposit it properly into its shell or feathers. That's how you get animals with perfectly normal eyes, but completely white bodies, like the stunning pied peacock, or the so-called crystal lobster, which is a 1 in 100 million catch.
To really put the rarity of albinism into perspective, only about 1 in 10,000 animals are actually born with this condition in the wild. It is a massive, high-stakes roll of the genetic dice.
But the situation gets even more tragic when you look at certain species. Take sea turtles, for example. Under the very best conditions, only 1 in 1,000 normal sea turtles even survive to maturity, dodging predators from the absolute second they hatch on the beach.
When you combine those two staggering statistics, you get the story of Albi, a tiny albino turtle discovered on a beach in Australia, looking like a little white speck on the sand. His chances of avoiding predators without any natural camouflage are tragically slim. In fact, there is no record of an albino turtle ever surviving long enough to nest. Nature's lottery can be beautiful, sure, but without camouflage, it's often a losing ticket.
But hey, losing pigment isn't always a tragedy. Unlike albinism, vitiligo doesn't harm the animal's quality of life or eyesight at all. It's simply an inability to produce pigment in specific patches of skin. So you end up seeing Dobermans or Rottweilers with these badass inverted-looking white patches sporadically covering their lips, eyelids, and foot pads. It happens in humans too, but in companion animals, it's a purely cosmetic anomaly that just makes them look uniquely awesome.
All right, let's get a little weird with Section 3, Bizarre Biological Mashups, where we look at split creatures.
Prepare to have your mind blown. Have you ever heard of bilateral gynandromorphy, sometimes referred to as being a half-sider? This is an anomaly where a literal 50-50 biological split happens right down the center of the creature. It is easiest to spot in sexually dimorphic animals, which just means species where the males and females normally look drastically different from one another.
This actually happened with a bird that showed up at a backyard feeder in Pennsylvania. Because northern cardinals are highly sexually dimorphic, this condition was strikingly obvious. One exact half of the bird had the bright, iconic red plumage of a male, and the other half featured the muted, brownish tones of a female. It literally looks like someone took two completely different birds and perfectly stitched them together down the middle.
And the mashups don't stop with birds. Let's talk about feline chimeras, like Venus the two-faced cat. Male tortoiseshells are often chimeras, but Venus is incredibly rare because she's a female. She has a perfectly split black and orange face with mismatched eyes that totally stumped the experts. She is the result of two distinct embryos actually fusing together in the womb. One side of her face activated black coloration with a green eye, and the other activated an orange tabby stripe with a blue eye, meeting in a perfect line right down her snout. She effectively operates with two separate sets of DNA in a single body. How wild is that?
Finally, we reach Section 4, Human Impact and Conservation, looking at accidents, breeding, and survival.
So if someone told you about a grape-colored Arctic predator, you'd probably assume it's entirely fake, right? We've talked a lot about complex genetics today, but sometimes a bizarre animal color is literally just human error.
The tragicomedy of Pelusa the polar bear is 100% real. She was suffering from dermatitis at a zoo in Buenos Aires. So the staff treated her with a common antiseptic spray, the kind you might use for a kid's scraped knee. The only problem, they completely missed the highly specific warning label that explicitly stated, "Not for use on polar bears." Pelusa turned entirely purple, looking like an extra from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory until they switched her medication and she returned to her normal snow-white color.
But on a much more serious note, human impact isn't usually just a funny accident. Our expanding footprint is pushing many of these majestic anomalies to the very brink of extinction. Take the rosy-hued Chinese white dolphins. They've suffered a staggering 80% drop in population over the last 15 years because of marine traffic and pollution. The Aquiltea horses of Turkmenistan, which possess hair that literally shimmers like gold in the lights, are down to fewer than 7,000 due to desertification and inbreeding. And the harpy eagle, a 22-pound bird with claws the size of a grizzly bear's, is rapidly vanishing as we clear more and more of their rainforest habitats.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to think about the sheer beauty and the fragility of the genetic lottery we've explored today. From a bird perfectly split down the middle to macaws made of solid gold, nature's canvas is infinitely complex. But as we've learned, winning this genetic lottery often comes with immense survival challenges, which are only made harder by human expansion. It's so vital that we protect the habitats that allow these biological marvels to exist in the first place. So, I leave you with this. If you could be reincarnated as any of the incredibly rare animals we talked about today, which one would you pick?